For God his grace is bold to trust these traitors.
They shall be apprehended by and by.
How smooth and even they do bear themselves, as if allegiance in their bosom sat, crowned with faith and constant loyalty.
The king hath note of all they intend, by interception which they dream not of.
Nay, but the man that was his bedfellow, whom he hath dulled and clothed with gracious favors, that he should for a foreign purse so sell his sovereign's life to death and treachery.
Now sits the wind fair, and we will aboard. My lord of Cambridge and my lord of Masham, and you, my gentle knight, give me your thoughts. Think you not that the powers we bear with us will cut their passage through the force of France, doing the execution and the act for which we have in head assembled them?
No doubt, my liege, if each man do his best.
I doubt not that, since we are well persuaded, we carry not a heart with us from hence that grows not in a fair consent with ours, nor leave not one behind that doth not wish success and conquest to attend on us.
Never was monarch better feared and loved than is your majesty. There is not, I think, a subject that sits in heart grief and uneasiness under the sweet shade of your government.
True, those were your father's enemies, have steeped their gals in honey, and do serve you with hearts create of duty and of zeal.
We therefore have great cause of thankfulness, and shall forget the office of our hand sooner the quittance of desert and merit according to the weight and worthiness.
So service shall with steeled sinews toil, and labor shall refresh itself with hope, and do your grace incessant services.
We judge no less, uncle of Exeter, enlarge the man committed yesterday, that railed against our person. We consider it was excess of wine that set him on, and on his more advice we pardon him.
That's mercy, but too much security. Let him be punished, sovereign, less example. Breed by his sufferance more of such a kind.
Oh, let us be merciful.
So may your highness and yet punish too.
Sir, you show great mercy if you give him life after the taste of much correction.
Alas, your too much love and care of me are heavy orisons against this poor wretch. If little faults proceeding on distemper shall not be winked at, how shall we stretch our eye when capital crimes, shrewd, shallowed, and digested, appear before us? We'll yet enlarge that man through Cambridge, Scoop, and Gray, in their dear care and tender preservation of our person, would have him punished. And now to our French causes, who are the late commissioners.
I won, my lord. Your highness bade me ask for it today.
So did you me, my liege, and I my royal sovereign.
Then Richard of Cambridge, this is yours. There's yours, Lord Scroop of Masham, and Sir Knight Grey of Northumberland. The same is yours. Read them and know. I know your worthiness, my Lord of Westmoreland, and Uncle Exeter. We will aboard tonight. Why? How now, gentlemen? What's see you in those papers that you lose so much complexion? Look ye, how they change. Their cheeks are paper. Why what read you there that hath so cowarded and chased your blood out of appearance?
I do confess my fault, and do submit me to your highness' mercy, to which we all appeal.
So, from the scene that we just reenacted, Henry V, we can show the overlying theme of irony being portrayed as one of Henry's main characteristics. For what we saw was that the three traitors, Cambridge, Gray, and Screw, they all were not giving mercy to the drunkard because of his sins of just being drunk in public. And King Henry asked them if he should show mercy or have him executed. They called for execution, and so Henry used that same judgment on them and called it irony because he's saying that you gave that kind of judgment to yourself. It wasn't me. I was giving you the option of forgiveness by giving the drunkard forgiveness.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the how strategic King Henry V is when giving this, because he gave them the option of if they wanted freedom, or I guess in a sense if they wanted a lighter punishment, they would have been more, I guess, courteous or more what's the word I'm thinking of, just gracious with the drunkard, because the punishment they gave to the drunkard, well, that was also appealed back to them. And I think that's just one of the ways King Henry V just uses his decisiveness and just strategy in general, strategic mind, to turn the plot and just sort of, I guess, not say manipulate other people, but just express how he's actually a king and not just a boy at surface level, as the Prince of France tries to make him believe with the tennis balls in the early scenes.
Also, I believe this scene is part of a developing theme about how Henry is growing into a young leader, and I feel like one of the elements of his leadership is being very smart. And in this scene, we see his skill as manipulation to these traitors and these people who have done wrong, and he's very smart in how he does this and how he gets them to confess. And really, I feel like the irony that we see in this scene is how the traitors are very sorrowful whenever they are discovered. Cambridge says, "I do confess my fault, and do so submit me to your highness's mercy." And I think we see that the traitors at first are fooled by King Henry, and now that they do realize that they are sorrowful, they actually do plead for mercy and forgiveness.
Yeah, and I mean, when Scroope says, "Let him be punished, sovereign, in case his example breeds more of the same kind," well, that's what Scroope says onto the drunkard, but then it's also repelled back to him by King Henry V. And I think that's such a pivotal distinction, that it just shows how he's becoming a upcoming leader,
Leader in development.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the reasons why they were able to push this war into the direction of the English, because he could use that. He could use his sort of, I still don't want to say manipulation, but his impact,
his powerful voice.
His power, his impact that he has on people to actually
motivate the troops in order to win the battle, even though
he's
the
very
odds were stacked against
charismatic.
him.
Yeah, he was charismatic as well, and he literally just gave them their own punishment on a silver platter. Like, he gave them the opportunity. Like, he was as punishable as he was also democratic in a sense, by giving them the option to choose how bad their punishment was by offering them the drunkard. So there was still a little piece of, here's your one opening, and then immediately takes it back. And I think that's just sort of one of the biggest points Shakespeare's trying to make, especially with character.
Yes.
This is an excerpt from Act 3, Scene 1, King Henry's speech. "Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more, or close the wall up with our English dead. In peace there's nothing, so becomes a man, as modest stillness and humility. But when the blast of war blows in our ears, then imitate the action of the tiger. Stiffen the sinews, summon up the blood, disguise fair nature with hard-favored rage. Then lend the eye a terrible aspect, let it pry through the portage of the head. Like the brass cannon, let it overwhelm it, as fearfully as doth the galled rock. Overhang and jutty his confounded base, swilled with the wild and wasteful ocean. Now set the teeth, and stretch the nostril wide, hold the hard breath, and bent up every spirit to his full height. On you, noblest English, whose blood is fed from fathers' war-proof." Okay, so this is an excerpt from King Henry's Act 3, Scene 2 speech. or scene one speech. So I feel like what's important in this scene is how King Henry is using these this primal symbolism when he says, "Then imitate the action of the tiger," and how he says, "Now set the teeth and stretch the nostril wide." So basically, through using this symbolism, Shakespeare is trying to, or King Henry is trying to say, like, he's trying to motivate his troops and really just be like animals and be very savage, and just go into battle and be prepared. And also, earlier in the excerpt, King Henry says, "Once more under the breach, dear friends, once more, or close up the wall with our English dead." So King Henry is really, he's also talking about patriotism there. And with our English dead, he's trying to make the soldiers feel a certain way about their nationality and really how they're fighting for their country. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's talking about the unity. He's talking about unity as just as he talks about lions, like making the imagery of lions, and like how a lion has like a lion's den and cubs and whatnot, and that's sort of how he's portraying his army as
that they're the lions, and then the cubs is the nation of England, and that they need to protect that, or you can portray it as like their kids and their wives, or something like that.
Exactly, and it's talking about not only just that imagery, it's also talking about just how the Shakespeare is talking about how the army itself and how it operates, and how, because in later scenes it talks about France describing the English army as ferocious beings, and that they will fight even though they're like completely knocked down. And I think that's just one of Shakespeare's main points when he points to this. It's not only just the imagery, but it's also a testament of King Henry's development into the scene, into this bigger leader that we see now.
Yeah, he's like a bigger than life kind of person. He is the voice for all the Englishmen towards the French. He is, even though he's such a young leader, he has such a powerful voice that can rally troops and make like the most passive of men turn into an animal.
As we were saying too, like, he's very charismatic, and at the end of the speech he actually says, "Follow your spirit, and upon this charge cry, God for Harry, England, and St. George." And by saying this, he's really sending them off into battle and just making them feel very compelled to fight for their country and just take pride in what they're doing. And King Henry, as I've said, is charismatic. People listen to him, what he's saying, and they really feel passionate about what they're doing, and they're fighting for, a good effort.
Yeah, but also it's talking about the theme of religion. He talks about different saints and whatnot. And I think it's not
Crispus or something.
Exactly, like there's a bigger purpose here. It's not just fighting for England, but it's also fighting for religion.
It's what we stand for.
It's yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a bigger purpose.
It's a bigger purpose as
It's
well.
it's exactly what was happening with the Revolutionary War. It was America was standing for freedom, for property, life, and
as well as
their
like
land.
in religion as well.
Yeah, in
like,
religion.
And that's what we see here. It's just the entire being of the English army versus the versus the French, who aren't really settled in what they truly believe. Because when we go back to I think it was Act 3, they don't think this is a war. They just see them as like, oh, it's just the
It's a little
English.
rebellion.
It's a little rebellion, but it's a deeper meaning than that. It's the entire being. Like I said, it's the entire being of the English army versus the French.
And that's actually what gets the French to take it seriously once they lose the first battle. Is they realize, holy crap, we actually need to take this seriously because we were losing a lot of men. So now we're going to take a look at Act 4, Scene 1, where King Henry is disguised as a commoner at a campfire, and there's multiple soldiers walking around. He's saying hi to them, and he's talking to them. And there's a couple lines that he says where he's asking some of them, like, what are you doing here? How do you feel about the war and King Henry? And some of them are saying they like him, and a couple of them say that he's a fool and they don't want to be here because it's just they're risking their lives for what? Just King Henry's sake for a war. And so what I really like is not the irony, but just the way he uses those answers in his next speech. Because in his next speech, before he starts it, he says, if anyone wants to leave, I will hand you money and you can go back to England to, go be with your families and not fight this war. But then he uses his bigger than life voice and his speech to rally the troops and say more of, but if you do stay with me and you fight with me, you will become, you will be engraved in history as people who fought for this war and won the biggest upset in history, or something like that.
So I was going to talk about another scene. It's when Henry is addressing the governor of Harfleur, and he's trying to get him to surrender, just to give some context to what I'm about to read. So King Henry says, this is in his speech to the governor, he says, "Desire the locks of your shrill shrieking daughters, your fathers taken by the silver beards, and their most reverent heads dashed to the walls, your naked infants spitted upon pikes, and while the mad mothers in their howls confused do break the clouds and the wives of Jewry, at Herod's bloody hunting slaughtermen, what say you? Will you yield in this avoid, or guilty in defense be thus destroyed?" So in this speech, I feel like it goes along with this theme that I've been talking about how King Harry is becoming a young leader, and how he is got these strategies and with leadership. And I've mentioned along in this other speech that he's charismatic and that he appeals to the soldiers and they listen to him. But I feel that another aspect of leadership is also having to be brutal with people and really trying to drive home your point and what you're trying to do. And in this case, he's really trying to get this governor to surrender, in which he eventually does. And he's threatening the women of the town, he's threatening the children and everybody. And he's really has this element of brutality that really causes him to surrender and just succumb to the English forces.
But what's more than that is that it's more of just a facade. That Henry, we know this, he's not that kind of person to actually have his soldiers rape the wives and kill the children.
It's this element of brutality,
but
connecting with that. He's not actually he's not actually going to do that with them, but he's putting on that character to really make them listen, and this manipulation.
Yeah, but that's why Henry says in a different scene that he'd rather be a slave than a king, because a king has to put on multiple faces and act multiple ways in order to protect his country. He has the weight of the country on his shoulders, because they don't surrender and they don't get this territory to set up camp, then they just simply lose.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you can continue.
I was going to say he's got a charismatic face, like you were saying. He's got multiple faces. One of them is charismatic, the other one is brutal, and also, like you just mentioned, he's very self-pitying in this one scene where he's saying that he'd rather be a slave and his life would be easier.
It simply would.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it speaks to character development, as we went on previously about having a charismatic aspect as well as a brutal aspect, and those are the two in conjoined. Charismatic as a team player, as in he's able to he's charismatic team player, someone that everyone can get along with, but as well he's a brutality for justice and this just ability to motivate people and bring them together. And I think those two in conjoined is what Shakespeare's trying to tell about King Henry's character, and I think that's one of the biggest points he's hitting on in these scenes.
Okay, we hope you enjoyed our commentary on King Henry V. Thank you.